Wow.
Fancy.
Wow.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mack Flash Five. There's 5 of us again. François is with us. Happy to have you.
No, this is Frankie. This is Frankie. That's a different
Frankie
guy.
Malton.
Frankie Malton.
The great grandnephew of Leonard Malton from Entertainment Tonight.
So when he
You guys
dies,
didn't know that about me?
so when he dies, how much money do you get?
Just nothing. Just like sales from the books.
Oh, man.
He
I
stopped
had a
making
ton of
those
those
in the
books.
80s. and
I
so-
had like I think I had like 5 or 6 of those.
Like movies you need to see or stuff.
Yes.
They're thick.
Can
Yeah, I
you
see the
imagine?
library all the time.
Love
Yeah,
it.
it's
Okay.
It's
Well,
good to be back. It's good to be back.
welcome to the Mack Flash
What are we
5,
talking about
the
today?
show where we like to get together and list our top 5 movies fitting a certain topic. My name is Matt. Next to me is François. Beside him is Mack Flash Mike Goes to Space, AB Part 2, and Scott.
No admin Scott. No admin Scott.
And
No, what is it? No gimmick needed?
Yeah, no gimmicks necessary, man. Just
That was
straight
it.
Scott.
Straight Scott.
Oh, everybody have their list?
Oh, yeah.
You ready?
Big time.
Oh, I
There
was
we
supposed to have
go.
a list ready. What?
Before we get started, I want to tell you how the show works. After we decide on a topic, we each make our list of our top 5 movies. We then pick 3 from our list and talk about them in depth and use the other 2 as honorable mentions. Now, you saw earlier in that title card, obviously, our topic today is our top 5 sequels. Francois picked that topic, and that's why he's in here today. We didn't want to do this episode without him, and he'll
So
be
nice of
starting
you.
the show. Francois, give us your number 3.
Well, I had a picture ready, and then during the thing, things got screwed up, and I wasn't ready for it. And I was really proud to be ready, but I think I got it right here. And
Professional.
oh, I know, right? Consummate professional over here. But okay. So my number 3, and it's weird that you're gonna think that this is like number 3, but it's to me it's to do the number 3 sounds like oh man, no, it won't do. Okay, well I'll tell you what it is, nice and simple. Because it's a sequel to an already very, very good movie, and so to think like that this sequel is actually, to be to still be good. It's one that you wouldn't expect it to be that good based on how good the first one was. It is The Dark Knight, because Batman
of
Begins
course.
was so good and revolutionary as a Batman movie that you're like, well, I can't see how the sequel is going to be any good. And then you watch it, and I'm not saying it's better than, and a lot of my choices, it's not necessarily, they're not all sequels that are better than. They're just really good sequels for some reason. This is one of those that it was a very good follow-up that really, dug deep into the story of Batman even further. That brought up, of course, the Joker with Heath Ledger, which was a really good, obviously a really good role for him, and the whole thing just turned out really good. So yeah, to me, The Dark Knight would be my number 3 sequel.
Fantastic.
It's on the top list of everything. When you search
Yeah.
it, it's no less than top 5. When I was
it's
doing my
always-
homework, yeah.
It's almost the thumbnail to like every
Yeah.
list.
It's
Yeah.
incredible. These guys know, like, I like Begins a lot more, but that's just personal preference. Dark Knight's probably a better film beginning to end, and it's at a faster pace, and it's just a bigger, more bombastic sequel. It was like right at Nolan's like peak between that and Inception.
Yeah,
Mm.
no, for real.
That
That's
opening
when people
bank-
actually knew who Nolan was at that. Of
course.
That opening bank scene in IMAX where they actually filmed in IMAX was crazy good. I remember going to see it in the IMAX and just love it. That opening scene is just a killer. Like
The 2 things, I'll piggyback off that because he shot in IMAX, and the car chase scene, and then when you see the truck flip, and that's all practically done on the streets of Chicago, you're like, this is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And yeah, he just took a bank heist that you've seen in a million movies and a car chase you've seen in a million movies, and Nolan just elevated it. And there's no one really talks about that because they talk about Batman and the Joker, but it's an incredibly done action film.
Oh, the stunts are amazing. The action sequences, the chases, all of it. It's very excellent. And the only one who successfully really managed to do that, what if superheroes existed in the real world that everyone tried to emulate after him, he did it in a way where you went, yeah, I mean, that works. My favorite part being Catwoman's ears, how it was just her goggles.
Right.
and when she flipped them up,
in a different
they
different movie.
they just happen to look like in a different movie, but in that series. What I'm saying is the realism injected in the series. Yeah,
Of course.
I mean, I think that people give obviously everyone goes crazy about Heath Ledger and the Batman versus Joker thing, but for me, Aaron Eckhart is amazing in that, and his Two-Face thing, and like him turning throughout it. I don't think he gets enough credit, because obviously everyone goes nuts for Heath Ledger and his performance, but Aaron Eckhart is one of my guys. I love that guy, and his performance is outstanding as Two-Face. I would have loved to have seen him live at the end of that movie and carry on to the third one as kind of like a carryover, because I don't think that they really did his arc.
There's a lot of weird behind the scenes where like they wanted it and Nolan wanted to save it, and then like they were kind of filming while rewriting that. It worked out great, but as the years go on, there's a lot where it's almost like a Spider-Man 3 where he didn't want to do Two-Face and they wanted it. So, but again, fantastic what we got, but you're absolutely right. I think the hospital stuff would take a total turn point, and Eckert's like a completely different role and character, and he's much more locked in. Before that, I think he's bland, but it's that hospital scene, and you get the tete-a-tete with him and Ledger is incredible. No one talks about that chasing cars scene, dog chasing cars scene. Everyone talks about the interrogation or that. That's very good, that scene with the two of them.
And it's far different than any other Batman sequels that has two villains in it. Because those movies start off with two villains, while this one has the Joker, and then we get Two-Face much later in the movie.
Of course.
Yeah.
All right. Great number 3. Yeah. We're going to move on to Mike, get his number 3.
All right. I was just thinking about when you said it's a superior film. You kind of have two ways to go with really good sequels. Either they're really good because they're like the first one wasn't as good, or the series is so strong and then this one stands out, right? When I heard of sequels, I was thinking I was going to probably just go horror the whole way. It's so easy to pull sequels out of horror, and so I was up and down and back and forth, and there's so many different ones, and Halloween's coming up. So I did start off that way. And then, so in the series I chose, I dove into Nightmare on Elm Street as my choice of series. And then I was having a dilemma of which one to pick, because I really do have a good time watching Dream Warriors number 3. It's the fun, silly one that sort of brought Freddy into the silliness, and it's when Craven came back and sort of revived it after, it was on life support in number 2, basically. And but then I went, nope, I have to go with the one that I always come back to as the most solid film in the series, because it actually can be pulled right out of the series and be its own thing, and it inspired another series of movies by Craven, and that is 94's A New Nightmare. So just pull that up here.
Nice.
And I just love the tagline on this. This time the terror doesn't stop at the screen. And that's what I love about that one. It's a whole different element just when you're like, okay, enough of these Freddys, because I think by that point, what is that, number 6 in the series, maybe? Or no, it's 7?
That is 7. Yeah.
7. And at that point, you're like, okay, he supposedly died how many times now? And he's back, what? But then all of a sudden, you're like, no, this is the actors, right? Robert Englund is Robert Englund, and everybody, they're all themselves in real life, and some of them know each other, and so this is just when I went like, man, Wes Craven is a genius. Yeah. He's a genius.
Like the first meta. Like
the first meta, like horror.
Everything's very self-aware.
The movie is about the movies franchise.
Yeah, yes. It's basically.
I've never seen this. Obviously.
Yeah, it's basically they. Wes is Wes Craven in the movie, and Robert Englund is himself, and
Heather Langenkamp.
Yeah, and certain people start dying, and so they wind up getting together to go to the funeral, and and then all of a sudden they realize Freddy is coming into real life. So you're like, what is happening, right? Because he's Freddy. Wow. And so it's the first in that series where I took you can take yourself out of the slapstick silliness, which there's nothing wrong with that, but you go, wow, this is a thinker. And it's a quality piece far down the line in a franchise that could have easily been, just written off and gone to space, if you will, like some other franchise. So that for me is my number 3. you wouldn't appreciate it if you hadn't watched the other ones, but you can sort of watch it on its own. But it's so much deeper because you know the actors and stuff if you've watched the other movies. So,
and like you said, it's so far down in the franchise. When you look at literally all the other horror franchises, you can go through the list of all the major ones, and you get to the 7th incarnation of any of those films, and they're basically hot garbage. Like they are like bottom of the barrel stuff. So for him to reinvent it and like basically make one of the best installments at 7,
without going to space, going to the hood, or having Nazis of some sort, like all the horror troops, right?
Obvious,
Like
it's so funny. Like me and Mike joke all the time about horror franchises going to space all the time. There's the Chucky goes to space, Jason goes to space, all the things, and it's like that's the go-to thing at that point in the franchise. It's like, okay, we're at 6 or 7. Okay, well, time to go to space. Like
exactly.
Fast and Furious.
Yeah, exactly.
That's next.
That's next. That's the next one going to space. Funny.
All right, let's see where you go with it, Andrew. Number 3.
Well, you're gonna love this.
I'm sure I am.
Hold on. Okay, we are gonna go
to space.
Space.
No, we're not gonna go to space. You actually mentioned mine.
Wow.
I had a feeling.
You guys hear that?
I had a feeling. Yes.
Okay, good. Okay, so I went the way I went with my things. I went with my 5 movies I'm going to talk about.
We can hear it very well. Actually.
You might want to turn it down.
Turn it down a little bit.
I don't think I can turn it down. I don't know. That's okay. Okay, so I'll just stop it.
6 on.
Was that the man behind the? No.
No, that is Dream Warriors by Dawkins.
That's the one.
That is off the soundtrack. The way I did my top 5 was I picked 5 movies that I enjoy more than the original.
Yeah.
And so when I went to my list and to narrow it down, I was like, okay, all 5 of these movies are not necessarily better than the original. Like in this case, I think it's up in the air whether this is better than the original or not. I think it's different, but I enjoy Dream Warriors way more than the original Nightmare, and I think it gets to that perfect balance for me. Mike said it kind of is the tipping point where Freddy becomes kind of silly, but for me, it's still scary. But it's also funny. Like Freddy becomes this fleshed out character where he's dropping one-liners so that you're on primetime, bitch, and
oh my gosh,
it also has like insane effects. You have the puppet master thing where he brings out the guy's tendons and like using them like a puppet, and it's got they bring back Heather Langenkamp. They bring back Nancy from the first movie. They bring in this cast of characters which are very cool, and you like all the characters. It's basically has these teenagers that are now in this kind of like psych ward, and there's been a rash of teen suicides, and so you find out through the movie that it's actually Freddy that is killing all these people off. So it really delves to me in a lot of like mental health issues and a lot of teen issues with teen suicide and that kind of stuff. So there's another layer to it. It also has a young Lawrence Fishburne or Larry Fishburne.
I was
at this
going to
point.
say, and you left out the main girls, Patricia Arquette, former
Patricia
Academy
Arquette is Kristen.
future Academy Award winner.
Yeah, Patricia Arquette is Kristen.
For this movie, right?
Yeah, Kristen is one of the best characters because she is the Dream Master. She can bring other people into her dream, and that's how they get the Dream Warriors. So they have all these different characters, and all these different characters have powers within the dream, and you have this group of awesome characters. My favorite being Kincaid, who is like a badass. Like he's super strong and like takes on Freddy, beats him up, and all that stuff. Anyway, Dream Warriors is a lot of fun.
It's a good time.
It's a blast, and I enjoy it. Over the years, I've definitely enjoyed it way more than the first Nightmare. But I agree with Mike that New Nightmare is one of the best films as far as the film goes because it's so unique and so such a different take on the horror sequel, especially for the time. So
cool.
Well, if this concludes the Nightmare on Elm Street sequels of the show,
I just watched them last year, and let's keep it going. My number 3 is the gay one, the real gay sequel. No.
the only
Number
one
2.
I've seen is Freddy's Dead. So to compare them, it is. I've seen
Why?
Nightmare on Elm Street
It
and
is
Freddy's
definitely
Dead.
the worst one.
Is it
Why
really?
would
Which one's that? Is that 5 or 6? Is that 6?
Well, because it was
That
on
is
at a
6.
party.
That is
The
number
last one?
6. That is
Yeah.
number 6.
I turned that one off. I didn't finish that one either.
It is
It's
But
one,
it-
it's
like,
been
it's
on
funny.
at a couple of parties, so I've seen it a couple of times.
There's- There is
You need
there's
to go to
one-
different parties.
There's one good thing about Freddy's Dead, and that is they have a little flash to Jason in it, and also to they have the Necronomicon from
Yeah.
the Evil Dead things is on the shelf there, and because they
Didn't
were
know
going to
that.
have a Freddy versus Jason versus Ash movie, and I was like,
Right.
Does
Come
Depp
on,
come
make
back
this
for
happen.
6 or
No.
New Nightmare? No, he's on the TV.
He's in a New Nightmare.
New Nightmare.
Yeah, this is
Yeah,
your
yeah.
brain on drugs. That one, yeah.
Yeah.
I just didn't know if that was 6 or New Nightmare. Cool.
All right, that's
Cool.
my
Okay.
number 3.
Your turn,
Dream
Scott.
Warriors.
I was gonna say, I have nothing to contribute to this.
That's all right.
So my number 3. Let's get to it. AB, I need your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle. Bring it on up because we're going. My number 3 is the 1991 classic Terminator 2 Judgment Day. It was no question. This was an easy list. Bring it back over here. I'm not as savvy as you cats, so I'm going to bring my photos on my phone. Full screen me, bro. This man, Apex Mountain. There has never been a higher apex than Arnold Schwarzenegger in 1991. Incredible storytelling. I was about 4 when this movie came out, and this was, again, through the years, this was a TNT special. TBS, I think, at the time, actually. It was showing it every night. It was on a marathon, and it just seemed like that. And once you got to 94, Dumb and Dumber were the only 2 movies that were on TBS regularly, and I had a ball my childhood watching Terminator 2. This was an incredible film for me. You get the story, and then you go back, you see Terminator 1, you get Linda Hamilton's arc that comes up in number 2, and she's totally reinvented as a character, and Cameron totally writes her out as more fleshed out, totally different from the first one. And again, one of the greatest on-screen villains in Robert Patrick's T-1000. And there was a house down the street from me in Windsor in the 90s that had that on the front porch for their Halloween decorations. And it's burned in my brain being like 6 years old and just staring at it. And he had the long sliver arms, and I'm just like, this is the coolest thing. Again, what needs to be said, well, I'm sure we'll talk about it again once we get around the horn, but Terminator 2 is just an incredible sci-fi action film. It's Cameron. It's a masterclass of Cameron shooting action, the storytelling, the time travel elements, where it picks up for the characters, the stakes. It was all incredible. It caught me at a perfect time. I was maybe a bit young at the time, but I remember playing Terminator 2 Judgment Day, like arcade games up in the early 90s, and it just being like this larger than life film that I always had this insane reverence for. And then, like I said, go back. If I were to watch a movie and I could never get sick of, and even in spite of Ed Furlong's acting, I am totally down for Terminator 2 any day of the week.
Oh,
Sorry about that.
little
Yeah.
behind the scenes.
Glister. Sorry about that. Yeah. Terminator
by-
2
by
almost
far.
made like it's like one of those that falls in the category to me as like I saw that before I saw Terminator 1.
I feel like
I think so too,
I
yeah.
think, yeah.
And then
three of
you
you
see
guys?
and then
Wow.
you see
Probably,
the first
yeah.
one and you go,
Yeah, I was born.
Oh, yeah, Terminator 2 is better.
But then
than
you go,
this.
oh, of course it is, and she's got the budget.
Yeah.
But you even
It's
take
not
the
fair, and
years-
it's not fair. It's like
It's not a fair
7 years,
comparison.
7 years
Yeah.
apart.
But you look at
anyway.
the 2 films, and it's an incredible, like a lot of sequels are a lot of the same rehash. You see it, and you get the same kind of theme. They're not even the same movies. The first one's like a sci-fi horror. The second one's sci-fi action, and it ramps up. There's no horror into it. It's just a summer spectacle. And again, like I said, being a child and getting it on VHS and seeing it on replay and repeat every single year. I think TBS Marathon was Independence Day and that. And I remember watching those movies like 10 times in one day and just being like, this is unbelievable. So for me, Terminator 2 is my number 3, easily.
Yeah, that's a good sequel.
Matthew.
Everyone's quiet because it's also on their list. The conversation's gonna come back around again.
No.
I'm gonna say it's somewhere on my list for sure, but it's not number
wow.
3. My number 3, my entire list pretty much is big franchises, and like AB said, I picked the ones where I think these are better than the original or even just the film right before it, because this is the third in the franchise. My number 3 is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Excellent.
Is such a good movie. This was the first one I saw in theaters. I saw Philosopher's Stone was like the ABC Sunday night movie. A week later, Chamber of Secrets came out, like premiered on TMN, and it was all leading up for the third movie to come out in the theaters, like that May weekend, I'm pretty sure. But with the third movie, Alfonso Cuarón takes over the directing duties from Chris Columbus, who had 2 very good movies. Those first 2 movies are really good, but they're clearly for a younger audience. The third movie, it's about came out 2 years after the second one, pretty sure, and all the kids are full on teens. They're 13 now, so the movie and the characters have to mature. I use the word mature, but they don't really mature. They become teenagers. They get older. They're far more curious about other things than Christmas, I guess. But continuing, the color palette in the movie is much darker to fit the tone of the movie, which, is for the audience. It's growing up with these kids, so you can't alienate them by keeping them, super, super kid friendly. Because that audience, like I said, grows up. They go through different life experiences. They try to relate to the characters as best they can. I'm trying not to go too much into the story because the story comes from the book. I can't really, it's not something you can really give to the movie because they're so close. They're so related. The adaptation is very well done. But one aspect of the story I do like is meeting Harry's father's best friends from childhood. Now you have Lupin, who's a teacher in the school, Sirius Black, who has recently escaped from Azkaban, and we get to hear his story a little bit, and the legend of Peter Pettigrew, who shows up later in the movie. And it really captured my imagination in the scene in the Shrieking Shack, where the 3 of them are deciding what to do next. Lupin and Sirius have Pettigrew cornered, and they're talking. This is the first time they've seen each other in a decade or more. And it really captured my imagination about like seeing these 3 and James Potter as kids in the school is really the first flash of that, that story arc that would come to be fleshed out in the later movies and stories and stuff. Now, I do want to talk about my favorite all-time Snape scene in the movie, and that's the only photo I brought up for it. Now they're all leaving the street. They've had a tussle in the Shrieking Shack. Snape's been knocked out.
I know what you're doing.
And on the way out, they leave through the Whomping Willow, and then Lupin starts turning into a werewolf. As that happens, Snape comes out from under the tree. He grabs Harry Potter. He grabs him. And he goes, Potter. And he's ready to discipline him. He might even hit him for all we know, because we know he's not beyond that from the movies. He's smacked these kids around once or twice till he realizes there's a werewolf behind him. And what he does is he turns around and huddles protects these kids. He doesn't like Harry Potter at all for, reasons.
That haircut alone,
which is another part of the movie. Maybe I'll mention right after this about, but anyways, this is my favorite Snape scene of all time, because he goes from, I hate this kid to I have to protect this kid. And it becomes, I guess, the first clue to, his infatuation with Harry's mother. It's like, yes, he's a brat, but it's Lily's kid. We have to watch out for him.
He's also a teacher too, though.
He is also a teacher.
I don't want to get fired.
Yeah, it's also his responsibility to take care of these kids. Like
the paperwork alone.
Yeah, we're like, I'm not gonna let these kids die. We're like, dang.
It's crazy. It's crazy. I would just say it's crazy to me. I've only seen the Harry Potters one time. This is one of the best, of course. It's revered. It's crazy to me that you like that scene more than the always scene, because I think as one person who's seen it once, I think that's like a 50 out of 10. That Rickman scene is. So when you say this, I'm like, wow, there's a better scene than that, because I think that always seen as the greatest
It's
thing
just
in the
it's
whole saga.
such a quick turn from I hate this kid to
Okay,
look
fair.
out.
Mhm.
And Mike mentioned his Harry Potter's haircut in the movie, which is really wild. And that was part of what Corone wanted to do for the movie. He wanted these kids to be themselves, be teenagers. In the first two movies, you can see the kids got their shirts, their ties, their sweaters. They're all real nice and prim and proper. When the third movie came around, Corone gave them all their clothes, all of the actors who play the students, their clothes, and said, dress yourselves the way you want to look. So if you go in the movies, their shirts are open or unbuttoned, untucked, ties are down to here, their robes are, maybe even tied around their waist. He said, dress like your parents aren't here. And shot that.
Dress
It
like
really-
there's no dress code at this
If I
school.
was Harry Potter, I would have had no sleeves and a backward snapback. So it would have been a way worse film. Okay.
My number 3, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
Oh, it's a good choice. Good series, I'll say that.
I feel like we may hear about a Harry Potter movie later on in someone else's list. I don't know.
Possibly.
It's crazy.
In the meantime,
perhaps.
we're going to hear François' number 2.
My number 2. So it's funny because you guys mentioned a lot of movies that I was like considering. That Terminator 2 was on there. Harry Potter 3 is definitely the one movie that made me stop reading the series, because I was like, you know how they say the book is better, which is true, but like I was like, yeah, I know, but I know I'm going to see the movie, but I'm not going to read the book, so I'm going to go. So Harry Potter 3, totally like agree. But for me, one that like really redeemed a series, and this is part of the MCU, but it's one of those things where all the MCUs to me, they're kind of like all on an even par, but there is a series that was struggling in my eyes until this version came around. And
It's 1 and 2.
I'm talking about, why doesn't it work? It never works.
I know you're talking
Why
about
does
1
it
and
never
2.
work? I'll tell you what it is. Is it right here? There it is.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
Thor
Yeah,
Ragnarok.
that's what I
Yeah.
thought.
It's great
That's what I thought.
choice.
Yeah.
The
It's my 5
quality
to
of
10.
photo,
Because-
quality of photo redeems yourself. That's a great photo.
That's a great
Totally
photo.
redeem you. So.
Totally redeem yourself. The thing about Thor is that the first movie is not very good. It's
The
like
second one's worse.
it's slow
I
and
think the
it's
second one's
nothing
better.
much happens.
I do not like
Then
1.
Second one is better, but for different reasons. I don't know. It's kind of cool. But Thor Ragnarok really turns the whole thing around, and we know why. The director came in, Taika Waititi came in, and he comes up to, or Chris Hemsworth comes up to him and says, I kind of don't really like the way I've been playing him. I'm kind of tired of it. And he's like, good, me too. And then from then on, he's like, oh, good, we have all these ideas, and they work together, and it turned into what it turned into, which is just an amazing movie. And people compared it to Guardians of the Galaxy, and it's almost like the 80s version where that's the 70s movie. You know what I mean? Guardians is a 70s movie, and like Thor had that 80s fluorescent, sort of extravagant lifestyle, and it had Jeff Goldblum in it.
I was just gonna say Goldblum.
So,
Always
yeah.
80s
Just
style.
amazing. But yeah, and it's great. Like of all the movies, the Marvel movies, it's hard to pick one that you can watch with an 8-year-old. But when they really want to watch one, and you want to reward them, you're like, which one are we gonna pick? And that one really fits well because it's very cartoony. It doesn't have very serious violence in it that makes you go like, eesh, ooh, I'm so, and so it's kind of like a fun romp, and it definitely revived the whole series. So Thor Ragnarok, number 2.
I like it.
Yeah,
It
because,
would be-
sorry, go. Yep.
No, I was just gonna say, phenomenal pick. Would be in my 5 to 10. It's an incredible, and you're right. They're all fantastic. We'll get to Marvel later, but it took relatively probably a 5.5 and a 6.5 franchise, and turned a third movie that's at least a 9 or a 10.
Yeah.
Totally reinvented and totally gave it a whole new. So you get that new trilogy from Hemsworth's Thor, where it's this, Infinity War, and Endgame, and it's just completely different than what you were on course for, and that's incredible.
Yeah, exactly, and it all works together, so it's great. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, when I had not really seen many of the Marvel movies, and then when I heard Infinity War and all that was happening, Andrew and I sat down and did all of them in not in a row, but over a few weeks. And the Thors up until that point were like the boringest. I was just like, oh,
yeah, definitely my least favorite.
Just got to check them off. Just got to check them off as I go through. Right?
So there's a lot in 2 I like.
Really?
And then,
and you watched Incredible Hulk?
Not well.
I don't mind
is
Incredible Hulk.
Pretty good.
I don't mind Incredible Hulk at
I
all.
love
That's the
Roth in that
Norton one?
movie. Roth's sick in Incredible Hulk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, let's be honest. Along the whole series, I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to be talking too deeply into Marvel, but I got more and more invested as I went farther. You know what I mean? So it's not a surprise that also did it. But you're right. That one was just so much more entertaining comparatively.
Yeah.
So. Oh, I guess it's me next.
Yeah.
I guess I should get ready. Okay, so somebody brought up a certain franchise that I'll share up on the screen in a second. Matt was talking about number 3, and I consider myself somewhat of a Harry Potter fan, and all the different directors that it sort of saw, the series, the Harry Potter franchise saw. And how Chris Columbus did the first 2, which really, in my eyes, are the only 2 Chris Columbus could have done because they're very kid-like, like you said, and they are sort of the book. They're not very dark at all. I did like Alfonso's take on number 3. Number 3 is great. Sirius is an amazing character, one of my favorite characters after Snape. He's one of those, and Dumbledore. Number 4, I could take it or leave it, to be honest with you, Mike Newell's interpretation. But my favorite director and my favorite film of the series and my favorite book of the series is, in my opinion, the turning point of the series, which is Order of the Phoenix, which is when the kids turn from kids to becoming adults because they are now essentially members of the Order of the Phoenix, which is job number 1 is to take care of the Death Eaters and Voldemort, and just sort of seeing them sort of grow up. I mean, even just visually, you can see them. These aren't just young kids anymore. At this point, they're 15, but I'm sure the actors are much older.
Blossoming for sure.
I think, did he just get his letter to Hogwarts? I think he might have.
A wizard, Scott.
He's like 2 Harry Potter movies. I am out of here. But anyways, so number 5 is my favorite. Number 5 is my favorite for the same reason that I hate number 5, part of number 5. But this is why it's such a good character, and it's Dolores Umbridge.
Oh my god.
Dolores Umbridge.
So much. I hate her so much.
Dolores Umbridge in the book is a horrible human, and you wondered how they would bring her to life. Sorry, I can't hear. All right. You wondered how they would bring her to life, just like I wondered how Sirius would come to life in number 3. And Gary Oldman did such a good job of that. Imelda Staunton was amazing. I despised every minute of her on screen, and that's exactly what you had to do because she was essentially the villain of that movie, more so than any other Death Eater. She's
like the, like that, like she's like there's a higher villain, but this is like the head henchman lieutenant. The one that's like that person's almost worse. I'm glad the other one's in charge, because if this one was in charge, this would be really terrible.
Yeah, and her immediacy of the fact that she was there ruining the thing that he loved, right? So like Harry gets that sort of relief when he leaves the Dursleys' house and he comes to school. And now she's here and she's tainting that world, right? Because, so you lived vicariously through Harry, right? And so she is now ruining his one place. Voldemort's out there and he's going to try and kill you. That's one thing. But here I am at school, and now you've gotten rid of Dumbledore. You've had all the good things sort of uprooted, and you're passing all these laws, if you will, and just destroying everything that he loves, right? And so that to me is the best of the. It's also the longest as far as the book, but it's got the most involved things occurring, and the prophecy, the whole storyline, the prophecy and Mystery of Magic, Department of Ministries, I should say, at the Ministry of Magic. Is just insane, that whole scene. And that was when they did a weird thing too with 3D for that. I went inside the theater and you put on the glasses when you were in the Department of Mysteries and all the prophecies were falling,
cool.
which was really, really neat. So that is my number 2. So
Yeah, the franchise itself is really broken up to a movie and its sequel, Philosopher's Stone, and then its sequel, Chamber of Secrets, Prisoner of Azkaban, and its sequel, Goblet of Fire, Order of the Phoenix, and its sequel
That's
is
genius.
Half-Blood
Is
Prince.
that like
Half-Blood Prince, and then the final two movies, which is one book, but they got two movies out
Oh,
of it.
as an outsider, I mean, I know it's one arcing story, but that makes sense to me. Like you're right.
That's really smart.
Yeah, I kind of feel like that's now that you say it,
Mike
it's like,
hates
oh,
it
it is
'cause
kind of
it's
like
true.
that.
I don't know if I don't know if I necessarily no. I mean, I don't know if I see it that way, to be honest with you, because I parcel them out. 1 and 2 go well together. You're right. 3 defines a line. 4 sort of hovers there and doesn't do much. And then, but when Yates comes in, he ties the last 4 together like a bow. Like they're all just the last 4 themselves, from 5 to 8, are just one complete story in my opinion. But whatever, they're great. Anyways, next. Andrew.
All right.
I should unshare. Sorry. Okay.
So we're going to talk about a movie that we just kind of talked about not too long ago. My number 2 is from 1991, directed by James Cameron. And
Piranha 2.
Oh, I read.
Oh,
Here,
no.
hold on. Here it is.
That's unbelievable.
Is it louder? Is it quieter?
We can hear it.
It's never loud enough, fam.
Okay, so we talked about Scott talked about this, and so I won't really talk about it all that much. But I will say, when I was a kid, I saw Terminator. I was one of the few people here that saw Terminator first. Apparently, I saw Terminator first. It blew me away, and I don't think Terminator gets enough credit when you talk about it, because obviously Terminator 2 like dwarfs it because it's so good. But Terminator itself, when it came out, was mind blowing, and the effects in it were mind blowing. Arnold himself, that was his big breakout role for it, and it was a great film. It was it changed the game in and of itself, and the effects in it for 1984 were crazy. Fast forward 7 years later, James Cameron takes his ideas and fleshes them out even more, and starts reinventing himself and like he does in all of his movies, reinventing the technology. And I have said for years that literally, I just watched this last night. I wasn't going to watch this because I've seen it a million times, and I was like, I'm going to watch it again because I need to watch it again. And so I watched it, and I'm like, literally, you could put this movie out today, and it would look just as good as anything that's out there.
Absolutely.
The effects, like
the motorcycle chase.
I just bought Terminator Dark Fate today at Walmart because it was on sale for cheap, and I watched that movie, and it's like, it sucks. It's all CG and everything. That movie looks like garbage compared to this movie. This movie was like, you're talking, what did Dark Fate came out last year? Was that right?
Yes,
so
correct.
Almost like you're talking like a movie that came out almost 30 years ago looks better than a movie that came out last year. The effects, and we're like, that's unbelievable. I like. Sorry, go ahead.
No, that's what I always say about Jurassic Park. First one looks better than even the last one that came out.
Sure, yeah, and I think like you're talking about a movie that was way ahead of its time. And like you've said, Edward Furlong is probably the only thing that you can knock on that film, but I don't really care.
I don't even care.
It's not even that big of a deal. He doesn't really take that much away from it. But other than that, this is a perfect film. Like, this is a perfect film from start to finish. It
kind of fits. And even on Twitter, they were talking about like, post a screenshot from like a movie that's perfect. And I posted it, and I even put the caveat, in spite of Furlong's acting, because it's like, yeah, does that movie better if you put like 91 Leo in it with the same haircut? But like the fact that it's Furlong is like perfect because he didn't achieve anything, but he plays Connor, and he plays Connor the way he does. It's not awful. The only thing is I hate is how old is he? He in the movie he's supposed to be 10, and he's actually like 15. That's kind of like The Dark Knight Rises takes place 8 years after. I just tell myself it takes place a year after. Like, you know what I mean? Like, just this, he's 15. And like, he's not 10, like, because that's ridiculous. Like, I just tell myself that, and it's a flawless.
Yeah, it's so crazy good. Like, I've definitely seen this movie a ton, and it never gets old.
We did double feature like 2 years ago.
The humor,
Roses,
the humor of it. Like I sent a snapshot to my buddy Ian last night of him doing the smile and be like, oh, that's a smile. And Arnold like,
So good.
And I was like, I was dying. And so I sent him this snapshot, and he knew right away, obviously, what it's from, and I was just dying laughing. But like, it's a perfect film. It's got, and like the first one is generally serious, right? It's like a very like Scott said, it's almost a horror movie. It's very serious. This one has again that perfect blend of comedy and emotion and the action that it covers all the bases. It's perfect.
You have three iconic characters.
And to me, even though this is my number 2, I would definitely say that this is the number 1 best sequel of all time. I don't think for me, I don't think there's any question of it, even though it's my number 2 and I have one that's ahead of it.
So there's one question.
There is one ahead of it for me.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think that like generally, and that's why I say this is my top 5 because it's what I prefer more. But generally, I honestly think this is better. This is the number 1 sequel. So,
at number 2.
I agree.
At number 2.
that sets the stage for my number 2 pretty well.
Which is your number 5.
So we'll move on to my number 2, which I can admit is probably and generally regarded as the third best in this trilogy. And Matt's going to bring it up right now. You guys, if you know anything about me, you know my number 2 is going to be my favorite in the saga, Return of the Jedi. And we've talked about it before, but we've never actually talked about it on a Mack Flash 5. So my number 2 favorite sequel of all time is the third film in the original trilogy, Return of the Jedi. And I want to talk about 3 things. Large me, bro. First and foremost, the straw that stirs the drink on this film. Like I said, Empire's a better film.
What a great analogy.
Empire is a better film, generally regarded. Everyone knows it is. A New Hope is also probably a better film than this. But the reason why I love this is this man. And if you want to see me slurp up Luke Skywalker, go to my favorite movie props and movie characters episode. But the Sarlacc pit rescue of Han Solo is an incredible way to start the film. Now, it's a little long. It takes about an hour to really go. But in it, and Luke comes back in all black, there is nothing I like in film more than Luke in all black, having the plan, good guy Lando, the crazy characters, everything being back on Tatooine. It just raises the stakes and it's credible. You go through all the Endor stuff, that's his own thing. What really carries this film for me is the interaction and the play between Luke, Vader, and the Emperor, introducing the Emperor after hearing about him for the first 2 films. It is an incredible choice. Vader kind of slipping back and Luke defiantly being like, I know I can turn him. And for my money, what I think is the singular greatest shot in cinematic history is this shot in the final duel. There is nothing I think in film that has ever been better than this scene and this shot. This is, for my money, the greatest thing that's ever been put on celluloid. And fun fact, I actually own pieces of celluloid from this film.
Wow.
I own them on Endor and Leia as Bouche, the bounty hunter.
That's great, dude.
So I actually own some of the celluloid. And with that, there's nothing better and more cathartic than, like I said, Luke's story arc and how he goes and the father becomes the master and the son becomes the master and Vader falls and he goes back and we all know the story and it's been talked to death. That stuff, that interplay, all the symbolism, everything it means to me, there's nothing that'll touch it in film ever, culminating in the funeral victory celebration scene. Not a day goes by where I don't light a fire in my backyard in my fire pit and I don't silently hum victory celebration because I don't like Yub Nub. I like victory celebration a million times more. Victory celebration is one of the most beautiful pieces of music I have ever heard. And when he's there and he gives him the proper Jedi burial funeral that he deserves on Endor, it's just an incredible encapsulation for the film. There's so much, and it's mainly carried. The movie itself is generally regarded as okay. For me, it's Luke carrying it. He puts that movie on his back. Everything with Leia as his sister, the 3 of them together, Vader's fall back to good, incredible. My second favorite sequel was my number 1 forever. We'll get to my 1 later. But my number 2 is Return of the Jedi.
Scott's a really good speaker, eh?
Thank you. I appreciate it.
You guys find yourself really sucked in when he
do it.
talks. I am just really in there when he talks. God,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Made me want to watch the movie.
Maybe tell me. Come on. I know you want to say something. Let's get a little ROTJ.
No.
AB.
All right. Well,
I've
say
I've seen the movie a couple times.
Yeah.
That's from a couple times over the years. I don't know.
I only own the movie in like 7 different
Yeah.
versions
Same.
of home video.
Yeah.
We can all admit Empire is a better film. Empire's incredible.
Oh, I will admit.
Empire
that.
is phenomenal. It's an incredible film start to end. The way that it does, the stakes it elevates. But like I said, there's nothing to me better than Luke in all black, Luke confronting Vader on the station right before the lightsaber, what it means. It's too late for me. Oh my God.
That's
that
a
to
really
my
forgotten
veins.
scene.
Oh.
Yep.
And I watched an interview. Funny enough, you should watch. There's an interview with Cody Rhodes from AEW, and he's talking about that scene. He's like, that's his favorite scene of all time because he obviously lived in the shadow of his father, Dusty Rhodes,
Right.
and he goes off this long rant of that scene in his own life. And I think about that.
Shoehorn some wrestling in here.
And it's just, it gives me chills, man. Gives me chills.
David Prowse was a wrestler, I'm pretty sure. No, you showed the picture of his funeral pyre, and it was that scene, and of course, Qui-Gon Jinn's funeral in Phantom Menace that made me think and realize and be like, cremation's not so bad. And over, the last,
You in real life, you mean?
yeah, I'm totally getting cremated because it's the Jedi way.
That's not bad.
I'm not doing it because it's the Jedi way. I just think it's fine. Like,
It's fine.
Who cares?
It's
Once
far-
you're dead,
yeah,
it's
it's
just
far-
I honestly, you know
Less-
what you can
it's-
do to me when I die? Treat me like Bond treated Mathis in Quantum of Solace and just take my money and throw me in a dumpster.
I used to joke when I was younger, like I want to be cremated, put into a cannon shell and shot out into sea, and like I used to say it all jokingly, and my mom's like, okay. I was like, whoa, oh my God.
We'll put you in a
Apparently
Folgers
that's gonna
tin
happen
and
if I die
She has
before
a
her.
cannon. She has a cannon and everything.
She's gonna make it happen if I die before her.
That's great.
Shoot me out to sea.
Those two
Which I'm
scenes,
down with.
and then the grandfather's Viking funeral in Rocket Gibraltar. If you ever seen that, anybody? No, it's good. Macaulay Culkin at like 4 years old in that movie.
Wow.
Yeah. So moving on to my number 2. Again, it will be part of a huge, bigger franchise. The second film in a franchise. It didn't take too much to, overtake the first movie. Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan is, of course, way better than the first one, but it is the best film in the entire Star Trek series, up to and including, the last few years. And everything I'm going to say is really just, it's small things that are better than the first movie. The costume design, they get those red uniforms that they use for the rest of their franchise, and they look terrific. The music is really good, but the first one does get one little point because it introduced that Star Trek main theme that got
Jerry
used
Goldsmith?
that got used for the Next Generation. Acting is far better than the first one. Cinematography is far better than the first one. The story, it's not just a sequel to the movie franchise, but it's a sequel to one of their episodes, Space Seed, which introduced Khan, and then 15 years later, they figure, this is a terrific villain. They dialogue from the TV show was like, I wonder what they'll be like in 100 years. Well, we find out only 15 years later that they've been, marooned because planet nearby exploded, turning the place they left him on to be just a desert planet. He's got his quest for revenge. It's very, Moby Dick. That's a huge reference and big homages to that. And Khan is Ahab and Kirk is his white whale. He will do anything possible to hunt down and kill this man. William Shatner didn't want to play a middle-aged Captain Kirk. He had disagreements with the producers. With enough makeup, I could still pull off younger Kirk. And the producers were like, no, we need to let everyone know that, it's a story about someone's mortality. It opens up with his birthday. He's getting older. And at the end of the movie, we find out who really can't live forever is Spock. And
Spoilers.
Not some, spoilers, but also, That's the picture I'm showing him up because it's the best scene in the movie. My favorite scene in, Star Trek franchise history. These two guys, like the two actors, Shatner and Nimoy, became real life best friends. I think they quickly realized how much they had in common when they met on the set of the TV show. They're both Jewish of Ukrainian ancestry. I think their birthdays are only days apart. Wow. The only thing they don't have in common, but they live close in geographies. Shatner was born and raised in Montreal, and Leonard Nimoy grew up in Boston. But there's a great documentary. I have it on my shelf, Mind Meld, where they sit in Leonard Nimoy's backyard, I think, and they talk about the good old days, their good old days in Star Trek, because pieces of dialogue from that documentary are like, we had fun, didn't we? And Shatner or Nimoy, I think Shatner says, we had a great time. People loved us. And Nimoy agrees. And then I think Shatner says, the rest of the cast, though, they weren't too fond of us, were they?
Let me see that. Let's see that.
Yeah.
But the scene here that I just had up is, heart-wrenching, make any man of a certain age cry their eyes out, combined with Spock's funeral at the end when Shatner as Kirk delivers a terrific eulogy in an amazing performance. He chokes up and it does it for him. It's just like, all right, yeah, let's. And then they hit the really whiny bagpipes and it kind of takes you out of it. But all in all, it's the best movie of the franchise. Like I've said 3 times already, Star Trek II: The Wrath of Khan.
What year did that come out?
1980.
82 or 3. Honestly,
fix that. You can put that in later. Dub that over later.
Edit it over. It'll be my voice.
Either way, I saw that in the theater with my
Or
parents.
1984.
I saw it when I saw it in the theater with my parents when it came out, and I will say, as a little kid, those earwigs in the ear were still terrifies me.
1982.
That's like talk about kinder trauma. That man, to this day, when I see earwigs, that's the first thing I think about. Like I see an earwig on the ground, I think of Wrath of Khan. I'm like, don't you come in my ear, man. Don't come in my ear.
When you see it on the ground there,
yeah, I was here thinking, I feel like I'm gonna jump up and jump in my ear. I'm like, nope. I've seen Wrath of Khan. I know what you're up to.
There's so much I can go on for that movie. That is such an incredible. Like I was late to the party about 5 or 6 years ago. I got on all the original series and that movie just floored me. I think that was the one I had maybe bought them on DVD and I watched Wrath of Khan twice immediately because I was like following it, and then I was like, I got to make sure to follow it even harder because that movie chugs along. It's incredible. There's no wasted scenes in it, and the one thing that's amazing is Shatner and Montalban don't have any scenes together, but you feel their animosity towards each other, but it's all shot differently. It's incredible. So it's just a total chess set move of a film where, and it's like essentially, and we've heard it compared, it's like a battleship movie almost, where instead of in the sea, it's in space, and they're firing at each other, and ultimately the moves that they do, it's incredible. So, and then Shatner portraying Older is an incredible. He puts the glasses and bits. Oh, it's unbelievable.
Would you say that it's better than the Battleship movie that came out?
Sure, that one had Rihanna though.
If I ever saw it.
I didn't see it either. I did not see
Okay, good.
As a guy who's seen neither, I'm gonna say they're equal. I don't know.
God, it's so goddamn good.
One last interesting point.
Carries that movie.
One last interesting point about it is like one is almost forgettable. You don't even have to see one to start the franchise, the film franchise.
I don't hate one as much as it's boring, but it's fun.
It is that. So
really
2,
spacey.
It's interesting because 2 starts what's known as the Star Trek trilogy. 2, 3, and 4 have like a complete arc. So the second movie starts its trilogy. That was in my notes and I forgot to mention it.
Yeah,
interesting.
I like 3 more than 4. People love 4. I like 3 a lot.
Is 3 your one?
Into Darkness, the remake of Wrath of Khan.
Yeah. Okay. Now we go on to, we've all said our 3s, we've all said our 2s, and we're on to our honorable mentions. 2 movies that made our list, but we're not going to talk about too much.
We're not going to talk about them.
We're not at
I'm
all.
just saying
Not
that
at all.
to
Oh,
Francois.
So
Hit us.
my first honorable mention is one that just comes to mind as soon as I say it, but it's Bad Boys 2. Because Bad Boys 1
We
is
were
like
talking about it.
not very
It would have been
good,
on my goddamn list if we were talking about cop films soon.
but Bad Boys 2 is like
Let's talk about Bad Boys 2.
it's just
No.
a good movie.
Honorable mention.
And then the I'm gonna give my next honorable mention. I'm gonna skip over this one and give it to How to Train Your Dragon, like 2 and 3. Just like all of the sequels,
Wow.
because
People love
what a
that
great
story. I heard
what a
it's
great
amazing.
way to treat a series. They just treat it really well.
I guess I'm
heard-
watching that now.
I heard from the kids when I used to work at the theater, they worship that film, and they said the one guy's like how they age up the characters and like
Exactly.
the father-son dynamic. I don't know. I haven't seen
They
the second,
age the
but
characters. As
I've heard
they go and,
great reverence for that film.
Yeah, it's really good. It's very, very good. The whole series is amazing. Yeah. So those are my honorable mentions: Bad Boys 2, and basically all of the Dragon sequels.
Love Bad Boys 2.
All right, here we go. The Road Warrior,
Yeah.
because it's awesome.
Agreed.
And Dawn of the Dead, because it's even more awesome.
Oh,
and I'm
okay.
talking original Dawn of
Yeah,
the Dead.
78.
Not remake Dawn of the Dead. I'm talking sequel to the Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah.
And those are my honorables.
Nice.
All right. So we're gonna go to my
Oh, geez.
honorable mentions.
Yes.
The new batch because it's fun as hell.
It's got Hulk Hogan in it.
And ooh, baby, movie. Evil Dead 2.
Even your honorable mentions have sound effects.
I know.
Hell yeah, they
So,
do.
good for
He's
you.
all about production. He's more about production than I am, for God's sakes.
I love
I'm
I
at my
love
match.
I love the show. I love the showman.
I love it. I love
Gremlins
it.
2 made so much
Gremlins
better
2.
after seeing the Key and Peele sketch.
Yeah,
That's hilarious and terrific and beautiful.
I don't think I've
Agreed.
seen it.
I've never seen
You've
that.
seen it
Oh
because
my
I think you put it
gosh,
up
are you
as
serious?
Oh yeah,
a
I'll
video
look it up
clip for
again.
trivia.
I'll have to look it up again.
Okay, my honorable mentions. First one, I wanted to include it so bad. Rocky 3. I wanted it so
Oh,
bad.
see-
Wow.
So bad.
Wow.
What?
Okay.
No, we chatted earlier and you talked about that. You said, I brought it up and you said, what did you say? Topical.
for
And I was like,
tonight.
oh, okay, great. We're gonna talk about Rocky 3.
I know. I
Nope.
couldn't lie to
You're not.
myself. I like Terminator 2 way more. And Wrath of Khan. So
Yes.
big saga, big franchise films, easily.
Nice.
My honorable mentions, they've been mentioned once each already. T2
Yeah.
and The Road Warrior.
Cool.
Nice. Good. Wow. The quickie is going to be pretty rough.
I've never seen The Road Warrior.
Well,
I've only
there's
seen
5
Mad
of us
Max.
now, so it might even out.
I've
Yeah,
only
yeah.
seen a Tom Hardy Mad Max. That is my Mad Max.
Ooh.
I know.
Ooh.
I've seen Road Warrior back in the day. Like I caught it on TV and I was like, "This movie's freaking amazing." And then I caught it
Yeah.
again by accident. I was like, "This is amazing again."
I came really late to Road Warrior. I saw it was referenced in an episode of Reboot when I was a kid,
Wow.
right?
Okay,
so.
yeah.
And then I
That's
saw
funny.
Mad Max at somebody's house. I was like, "Oh, this is pretty good." And then I saw Road Warrior for the first time maybe 2 years ago.
Should
And I
watch
was like,
those.
"Oh, it's this one everyone's talking about."
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah.
Yeah. It is on another level for sure. I talked about it on with previous episode. But yeah,
Cool.
amazing.
That ends the honorable mentions. Frankie Malton,
Number one.
we need to hear your review of your number 1 pick.
And why is
Well,
it Die Hard 2?
I'm glad to bring you some entertainment tonight. Did you say Die Hard 2?
And why? Tell us your number 1 and why is it Die Hard 2?
And why is it Die Hard 2? Well,
it is.
I'll tell you what, my friend, you're not far from it, because here's the thing about Die Hard 2 is like I actually do like that movie a lot.
I do
and
too,
from
man.
a lot of people say like a lot of people like this shit on Die Hard 2, and I was like, have you seen Die Hard 5? And so,
I didn't know there
to
was
which I-
one.
to
There
which
is.
I say, yeah. But I have to say, I did include this one. It is Die Hard.
Wow,
Vengeance.
awesome. It's way
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
That's awesome.
Because it's Die Hard 1 is amazing. Obviously, we all know this about the movie. Die Hard 2, admittedly, and you have to be objective about the movies you watch. It's not as great as Die Hard 1.
Agreed.
And
No.
you can see the weaknesses. Like when you watch it, you say, "Oh, I see why people don't like this." But if you're really into it and stuff, you kind of bypass it and you like it. Die Hard with a Vengeance just doesn't matter. Everybody likes that movie. It's polished. It's got that sort of new veneer. That sort of like, we'll inject some money into this. We'll get you a partner, which is like, at first you're gonna get John McClane a partner. No, I don't think so. But then they get him, Sam Jackson, and you think, okay, yeah, this is gonna be pretty good. Zeus, hey Zeus. Do I look Puerto Rican to you? It's just so many good jokes, so many good lines. And Die Hard with a Vengeance. That's basically it for my choice. Sorry, that's good. Oh, see, I can't even follow.
You talk. Someone else was talking about jumping in to a franchise in a different movie. I jumped in to Die Hard on that when it came out because I had not watched the others, and so that one came out at that right age where I was
fair.
Yeah, and it was on the movie channel or whatever all the time. And so I watched it and I went, this is good fun. It didn't ever make me jump back to watch the others, but that's just because of the age I was. Like, I didn't really care. Yeah. But that one was just a good fun time. You know what I mean? Like, and you could watch that every time it was on. You could catch that in any part and just be like, oh, okay, this is fun.
It's super rewatchable.
Yeah.
Simon says,
I was just going to say, speaking of rewatchable, so on one of the podcasts that features Quentin Tarantino, he talks about that movie. And at the time, a certain gentleman who's in another movie around that same time decided he wanted to be a main star. And so he passed on a number of supporting roles. And one of the supporting roles he passed on was that movie. And that person was Larry Fishburne, who we've already talked about. So Larry Fishburne passed on the Sam Jackson movie and on Die Hard with a Vengeance. And because of Pulp Fiction, he also passed on Pulp Fiction. Larry Fishburne passed on Pulp Fiction. So because of Pulp Fiction, Samuel L. Jackson got that role of Die Hard with a Vengeance because of Pulp Fiction.
Thus why people confuse them.
Yeah. Exactly. But then, as Quentin points out, Larry Fishburne goes on to do Matrix because of that too. So if it wasn't for that, we don't get him in the Matrix. But I was just
because Will Smith passed.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
As Neo. Yeah.
But
Will Smith passed as Neo.
I thought that was crazy. Like, because he passed on Pulp Fiction, he then doesn't get that role in Die Hard with a Vengeance, which is
Dominoes.
I see.
It's crazy. But he actually had that role all signed up, all like sealed up to do the Die Hard with a Vengeance, and so they were negotiating, and at the last minute, because of Pulp Fiction, the studio saw Pulp Fiction, they were like, "Oh, we're going to offer that to Samuel L. Jackson," and he got it instead.
Great.
Which was like, oh,
wow,
ouch.
I think it's better. It's obviously he just plays it a little bit more dorky, and he's got that gear, but you don't see it because he's trying to be an honest man. Like, Fishburne just has more of a presence, more of a linebacker, boys in the hood presence.
Yeah,
Whereas Sam, you see him as the shop owner, you're like, oh, he's a little dorky, but he's got that edge that John like brings out of him. He just works better.
He definitely has, like, Lawrence Fishburne is a serious dude, and he's like, he's pretty tough in a lot of movies.
Yeah, he's imposing.
But he doesn't have that next level like badass gear that Sam Jackson has, I think.
No, but close.
So next episode, top 5 Samuel L.
Jackson, I'm in.
Or
Lawrence. So many movies to choose from. Oh my god.
All right.
So when choosing my number 1, I was really back and forth with what to pick, and do I make it because it's better than the original, or is it just because it's my favorite of all time? I was like, is it Godfather 2? Is it this? Like, I don't know. I was all over the place. And then all of a sudden, just sort of a light bulb went off, and I went, no, I'm going to pick the one that to me is better than the original because of how damn fun it is.
Yes.
And my number one sequel.
So bad.
My number 1 sequel is 100% Gremlins 2, the new batch. Now, say what you want about Gremlins 2, the new batch. You can say it's cheesy. You can say, you can say Frankie Malton's gone. You can say, yeah. Apparently, when I talk, people leave the room. I don't know if this is a thing, but anyways, for me, and I'm going to show another photo in a moment, but for me, there's just so many laughs to be had in this. Like, Gremlins 1, you could see when Dante came out, and Spielberg with the idea and things, that it was kind of more of a horror, right? Like, it's not really a kid's film, and there are parts in it that are just like a little scary, and I even felt that way when I watched it, and But when it came to Gremlins 2, when that came out, kind of talking about movies that were on the movie channel all the time, I just couldn't stop watching it. I would watch it over and over and over. And it's essentially, and I'm going to just share this here, because of these guys. Now, I don't know if we can close up a little. I don't know how.
There you go.
Now, this is a toy line of things here, but this is the best image I could find that sort of showed all of the different kind of Gremlins. This is why I love Gremlins 2. And in most movies, it's probably the part you don't like. Oh, it's all the silly characters. But in this, seeing all of the different ones, and when they would come on and they'd do their silly thing, the scientist and the lightning and all of the different Gremlins, Greta the girl, every single thing every time was cracking me up. And it didn't pull me out of the fact that these guys are still horrible and still could just cut your jugular at any moment if they really wanted to. But I was laughing the whole time. And for me, I felt like that was Joe Dante's goal in this one, right? It was just have a good laugh. Like Scott mentioned at some point, you've got Hulk Hogan yelling at them in there because the movie cuts out. And you just can't help but enjoy yourself, in my opinion. Right. And I know some people will say it's cheesy, but I just feel like it's just the perfect mix of sort of horror and comedy. And so for me, it's going to be Gremlins 2 as my number one.
Oh, man.
It's an absolute self-parody.
Absolutely. Yep.
Yeah.
For some franchises, they head that way, and it's a huge downer. But that one works so well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I love how they brought back all the characters, like even Dick Miller and his wife. They bring them back because they're on vacation in New York, right? And they're taking pictures and all that stuff.
I'm gonna watch it again.
That's brilliant.
So you have all your main characters, right? Phoebe Katz, and then you have all your different main characters, and so you feel like there's some validity to it from the original, but you're in a whole different setting. So you're like, okay, already this is different, right? And then you just have all the over the top, like what happens to the guy who runs the building there. Or
oh man, and even they bring in the different. So there's the TV station, right? It's
that's
station, and there's all the different shows that are going on, like this cooking show. And my one of my favorite things about that movie is the old horror host.
Yes,
that's on there, and they incorporate. He's one of the main characters, and I, as growing up, watching horror hosts on things, that was my jam. Like I love me a goofy horror host, and like Elvira and all the rest of those things. So to incorporate that in there and make that part of the the shtick of the story, I was like, I'm all in on this. I love it.
Yeah, I just find I don't get bored with it. You know what I mean? Yeah. Beginning to end, it's just entertaining. But there you go.
John Glover, I think it is, who plays Clamp, the guy who owns that building, is amazing.
Lionel Luthor.
Yeah, he plays sinister roles like Lionel Luthor or slimy roles like he did in Scrooged. But in this, and it's those roles where I'm just like, oh, he's in this movie, and they talk about him briefly at the beginning. It's like, Mr. Clamp's coming down. Everybody look busy. They kind of paint him slightly as like a tyrant, and he comes down with big smiles like, oh, I just wanted to see how everyone's doing here on the 11th floor. And he's not the brightest person, but he's hilarious.
Mm-hmm. Well, and he ends up being a nice guy, right?
He's a very nice guy.
Yeah.
And I love, my favorite line of his is he's in his penthouse office type thing. And I think Billy must have said, we have to evacuate the building. He's like, oh, this gives me a chance to use my secret passage elevator.
I'll watch this again.
Amazing.
It's so good in that movie.
Yeah. Fantastic.
All
right, Andrew, what music do you have for us now?
You know where we're going with this. We know where we're going with this. So I planned on doing something different because I didn't want to use this movie. I wanted to use it for something else, but there's no way I could do this. This is in my top 5 movies of all time. I've literally seen this movie 400 plus times, and I'm not even exaggerating, literally 400 plus times. And that movie is 1986, also by James Cameron. My number 2 and my number 1 are both directed by James Cameron, and this is Aliens. I'm a huge fan of this of this franchise, but I'm a huge fan of this one in particular. I think that they took what they had developed in the first one, which is a horror movie, and like James Cameron did with T2, he ramps it up to 11 on this, and he adds the action, he adds the characters, he adds the situations where he puts people in peril. He brings in the interesting characters. So you can see on there, they have Newt, and they're bringing in the little girl to have the mother-daughter relationship that Ripley has with her. I just literally cannot talk about this movie enough. I used to put this movie on when I was a kid. I had this on VHS, and I would put this on in the background when I was playing, and literally I've watched this movie so many times that I can not only say that word for word for like line for line as the movie's going on, I could do it for sound. Like the sounds that are going on, like the doors opening and closing. I know the sounds. I can make
Do
the
it
sounds
right now.
going on.
The whole film.
From the first
I believe
one.
you can.
But like I like, again, it was my go-to movie growing up as a kid. Just watch it pretty much almost every day, all the time when I'm playing, or on a Saturday afternoon. I would sometimes watch it back to back. But yeah, I've watched this movie a ton, so I love it.
I got to ask you, why didn't you go for the trifecta and have Piranha 2, Terminator 2, and then Aliens? You could have.
Piranha 2 gets a lot of flack, but I like Piranha 2.
See?
That's Cameron's first movie, Piranha 2. But without Piranha 2, without him making Piranha 2, we don't get Terminator. We don't get.
That's
T2.
what I'm saying.
We don't get Aliens.
You could have went in order.
Anytime people start slagging on Piranha 2, I'm like, show some respect, because without those, we don't get any of the rest of this stuff.
That's
so
fair.
I'm not complaining
show some
about
respect. Piranha 2, and it's got Lance Henriksen in it.
Hey, you gotta
Hell
crawl,
yeah.
you gotta crawl before you can walk.
So yeah, that is my number one, Aliens.
All right, Scott, what you got?
For sure.
Okay, I'm gonna change up my hat on this one, and anyone who knows me knows that more often than not, I'm gonna cheer for a particular kind of person, and I'm gonna cheer for the villain of a film. And there is no movie that I've ever seen that gave me a more wilder feeling than the villain accomplishing their set out goal than this film. The greatest sequel that's ever been culminated, and it's Avengers Infinity War. And I know people like the payoff from Endgame a little more, and Endgame grossed more money, but for me, being in the theater and seeing the puzzle pieces finally come together that they'd been setting up, into that moment, and then you get in the theater and you see Infinity War, and it's the first true time that all the stories are intersecting, and they had been on a roll unlike anything ever. They had just come off Civil War, which for my money, if we're looking at standalone sequels, and that would probably be my number 2 in the MCU. You get Civil War, you introduce Spider-Man and Homecoming, you do Thor Ragnarok, and you do Black Panther, and they all kind of have little clues that you finally get to Infinity War, and it's just an incredible moment, encapsulation in film. And you get this character like Thanos, who's an incredibly fleshed out character that every time I watch this movie, and I've seen it now, this movie came out in 2018, I've probably seen this movie 25 times. And you catch something new every single time, and just the way Brolin portrays him, and he's beaten down, and Thanos to me is it's his movie, and he's a little bit more fleshed out than he is in Endgame. In Endgame, I think he comes back as a little too mustache twirling villain, but in Infinity War, you really see his motivation and his drive, and you can't help but understand where he's coming from, and you don't want him to win, but then you see it, and then you ultimately get through the whole film. And again, there's nothing greater as a film experience than seeing Doctor Strange working with Iron Man, and Spider-Man jumps off the bus and he joins, and then they go to space, and as it's going, it's the Guardians and Thor and Rocket and all the stuff. Everyone's seen the movie, all the greatness that goes, culminating in the Battle of Wakanda. Incredible moment leading to one movie scene that I think about commonly, and that's the snap, when Thor should have gone for the head. And it's not just the snap itself, which is a scene we'll get to in a second, but it's seeing the heroes fail. But again, when you really dive into it, it's Thor failing due to his arrogance, because he had to monologue. And it kind of brings back to like that Incredibles thing that they call out bits of superhero. But you see, he didn't go for the head because he wanted to have that arrogant moment where he could say, "I got you," and look in his eyes And you see it and you go, our heroes are not much better than the villains. And that's something that's dove deep into The Boys if you watch it on Amazon Prime. But you see this in Marvel and you're like, that would happen. They would have been so arrogant at this time that they underestimate their villain and they pay the ultimate price. And again, you see the snap. And like I said, if I've seen this movie 25 times, if I have about 10 minutes to spare on anything, if I'm waiting for something or if I need to kill 10 minutes at work, I will find on YouTube the snap scene. And I will watch that in its entirety. And I'm just floored by the fact that there's no music, the scenes, the sadness that everyone's going. Rockets, no, 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 no. I have never experienced anything like that scene when you're just like, this is insane. Leading to Captain America's God, and it ends.
Leaving the theater, hey? Like
you felt like you just left the funeral.
The theater after this was amazing.
Yeah. And then once other people don't talk about it, I love the closing credits of that too. And then you get the bang, 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 and it says Avengers Infinity War, and then the letters turn to dust. Oh my God, what an incredible... I'm incorporating everything. So for me, as an encapsulation for the films, people could say Endgame because of the payoff. I like this. And frankly, I liked that year of like constant thinking about that franchise. I like when Endgame came out and they had the empty seats and the press junket. It was fun. I liked that year of not knowing what was going to happen. So for me, I think the greatest sequel, I think their number one true blue crowning gem in filmmaking is the Russo's 2018, along with produced by Kevin Feige, because he gets all the credit in the world, Avengers Infinity War.
Nice.
Amazing.
Good choice.
And a sequel where the characters go to space and no one bats an eye.
Yeah, incredible. And they reference aliens.
It made
that is
sense.
a great point.
You know that really old movie, Aliens?
Yeah.
There's so much comedy. The Guardians coming in. Why is Gamora? Oh, everyone's so good.
Okay, my number one, I'm sure won't be a surprise to anybody. Again, part of a huge franchise. It's technically numbered 5. It's Empire Strikes Back.
Oh, I was like,
that's right.
Yeah, I didn't know.
Whoa.
I thought you were going to say, what's number 5? I'm like, is that Diamonds Are Forever? I'm like, what?
No, but it's Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
That's a better call.
And Scott mentioned it before. He said he admitted it himself. It's probably the better movie, which I would, absolutely agree about. George Lucas makes Star Wars. It becomes a huge hit. And he wants to make a sequel, but he doesn't want to direct it himself because he's the genius who wrote down Ice Planet. Where can we film that? Oh, in Norway in the middle of winter? I'm not going. I'm going to hire somebody else to do that for me. So he hires Irvin Kershner, who takes the ball and runs with it. That's a sports metaphor coming from me. And I hope was correct.
Sounds right.
Coming
from me.
He directs these actors and gives these characters far more emotion than they had in the first movie. And I just want to bring up, of course, it's a fantastic movie and it has all of these great things going for it. It introduces Yoda. It introduces Lando. It introduces Lobot. It reintroduces Boba Fett because he showed up in the holiday special. But of course, that was the big thing people saw, and he's like, "Wow, he looks great." It's a guy with a helmet became pop culture icon. Just to go back to Irvin's direction of characters' emotions. I mentioned earlier in a few episodes ago one of my favorite characters being Chewbacca. And I'm pretty sure I might have told this same story then, and I certainly told it to all of you off camera before. But the scene I want to talk about, my favorite scene in all of Star Wars, and this is the movie where Vader reveals that he's Luke's father. My favorite scene in the movie is the carbon freezing chamber from beginning to end. They get in. The music is fantastic. There's slight confusion over what's going on. There's dialogue between Vader and Boba Fett, which sounds terrific. What if he doesn't survive? He's worth a lot to me. Vader says, the Empire will compensate you if he dies. Put him in. at that point, Chewbacca goes nuts, roaring, wailing, obviously, knocking.
What's he say? Because
That's right.
I'm going to get.
I wasn't
I'm
going to bring
going.
it up.
No,
It
I'm
says,
going
"Don't
to
do
get to
that."
that.
Yeah.
I'm going to get to that.
Okay.
He's knocking stormtroopers all over the place. Han goes up to him and he says, "Chewie, you got," he tries to calm him down. He not only he gets into Han's face. He gets angry at Han as if to say, "Over my dead body, are they putting you in that thing?" Watch and it's all there, just perfect emotion. It's Peter Mayhew in a yak fur costume, raising his head. Some puppeteers make his mouth move. Ben Burt is there with the sound effects, and it all works so well that I have goosebumps. Talking about it right now. It's my favorite scene, my favorite, sub scene of a scene in Star Wars. Usually, when Chewbacca goes nuts, is usually my favorite scene. Maybe we'll do a top 5 of Chewbacca going nuts scenes, but second on that list would be in Force Awakens when Han dies, calls out, roars, shoots a bunch of stormtroopers as he's running through over the gantry, gets down to the bottom of the stairs, hits the button like fuck this planet because he's got bombs all over the place. I'm taking all you guys with me. That's number 2 as far as Chewbacca scenes are concerned. But aside from all that, it is the best Star Wars movie. Past, present, future, Mandalorian episodes included. My number 1 greatest sequel of all time. One of my favorite movies of all time. Star Wars Episode 5, The Empire Strikes Back.
Nice.
I feel like maybe there might be a Games Lounge card coming to you that's all Chewbacca related at some point.
Yeah. I could see that happening, right? But
funny.
it's all going to be written in
One
Wookiee,
will be
and no one's going to
South
know how to
Park.
read it except him.
I didn't put Empire. I didn't put Empire. Empire is pretty much my favorite movie ever. I didn't put it on there because I knew either you or you would, or wait, there we go. One of you two would probably put it on there. I figured it would be you, so I didn't put it on there. I love Empire. Empire has been my number 1 favorite movie since I saw it in the theater in 1980. I cannot talk about how much I love Empire. It's like it hits all the perfect story stuff. It hits all the Han and Leia stuff, which is fantastic, and hits the Luke and
Everything.
He begins his Jedi training.
Yeah,
you start the movie on a battle that rivals the ending of A New Hope, and you could say that the Battle of Hoth is better than the trench run of the Death Star. It's an incredible scene.
But it's so funny because I've seen a ton of videos of people our age showing their little kids Empire for the first time, and the impact of Darth revealing that he's Luke's father still has the same effect that it has now, right? We're like, what is it, 40 years later? You're talking about 40 years later. It still has the same impact on little kids now than it did as it did on me when I was when I saw it in the theater. I didn't know what to do. I didn't know it blew up my world. But like, Darth Vader is Luke's father.
Yeah.
Like, forget it. I'm done. Like, I'm done with this. I don't know how to handle this. And I love watching videos of like guys and girls showing it their kids that, and it blows their minds like 40 years after the fact.
I will say my daughter was more shaken up about the fact that they were brother and sister, Luke and Leia. They're what?
Yeah,
that was
okay.
more. That was more
It kissed.
Yeah,
I love that movie. I love Empire, so I'm glad that I was right that you were going to put it on there.
Yeah, it had to go on there. I mean, we try our best to talk about movies that haven't been on previous lists, but there was no way that was, going to go to the
Did
wayside.
you use that for another list?
I'm sure I did.
But
It's been brought up.
All right,
We're
well,
talking about
thank you
Empire.
for.
delete this one then.
We're starting over again. It's all over. No, I don't think you have. I don't think we've talked about Empire on the show before. We've obviously talked about Empire a million times, not on the show, but
Characters, I think.
maybe just
Certainly,
characters.
I talked about Chewbacca and just repeated that. story again.
Well, we'll probably talk about it on a further show because I haven't used it yet. So
Oh.
I'm sure I'll shoehorn it in somewhere.
I'm
I
gonna
wanna
my
know-
top 5 choice is gonna be top 5 films that aren't Star Wars movies. It's gonna be mine next.
I'm shoehorning it in there like it's not a Star Wars movie.
Number 3. Number 3. What?
It's the only movie you could really watch and consider that it's not really a Star Wars.
It's not really Star Wars.
Wow,
It-
what
No.
the hell?
It supersedes. It's like
Yeah.
so good that it's like
very
elevates
meta.
it outside of the saga.
Oh my God. And that is the holiday special.
Oh my God.
Matt loves the holiday special.
I don't love the holiday special, but I slog through it yearly because because I have the DVD, and if on Life Day, November 17th, I will be watching it again.
Jammed.
It's good.
I'm not watching that.
It's funny.
Cool. Good list, guys.
Great lists, everyone, and I think that's going to do it for our show. If anybody else has any other comments about the movies we mentioned,
Sequels
Wonderful.
can be good, guys. The moral of the story, guys, is don't hate on all sequels because sequels could be good.
Yeah.
For the most part, they're terrible, but
And they apparently can be in
sometimes when they can
space.
be good.
And they can be in space. We found.
most
can be
of
in
them
space
have
and be
been in
good,
space
so-
for this
My
list.
my movie literally says space in big letters when
Mm,
you get to the Guardians.
that's right.
Yeah, dun, dun, dun. Yeah, so let's get out of here. My movie is literally in space.
That is
Right, yeah,
amazing. That is amazing. That's perfect.
Well, I want to thank everybody for being on the show, and I want to thank everybody for watching the show.
Thank you.
Please
thank
don't
you.
forget to like, share, and subscribe this video. Do not forget to play the Mack Flash 5 quiz later today, dealing with the movies we've just discussed. So as long as you've watched this, you will have, the study primer in your head. You'll have all the answers ready. It's an open book quiz almost.
2 tabs. If you open up 2 tabs,
For sure. Absolutely.
it'll take forever to do, but I'm sure it'll help somehow. I don't know.
Also, do not forget to go to wearitproud.ca to get all your Mack Flash merch. You see some of us sporting that today. And with that, thank you for watching. I forgot to bring up the thing again.
You'll get it one of these times.
I will. I swear. Free frame. Good night, everybody.